There is a moment in life when Allah begins to take things away from you. Not your money, not your success, not your comfort, your people. And when it happens, it feels like loss. It feels like rejection. It feels like being left behind. But what if this is actually the first sign that Allah is about to change how you hear Him and how the world begins to see you? Stay here, because what you are about to understand may explain every ending you never got answers for. Allah withdrew your access before you lost yourself. There are moments in life when something changes quietly, almost without a sound. A person who once felt close begins to feel far. A conversation that once flowed easily starts to feel heavy, and you find yourself standing in a space that no longer feels like it fits who you are becoming. In those moments, your heart may tell you that you are being punished, that you have been abandoned, or that you did something wrong. But sometimes, what is actually happening is something far more gentle and far more loving. Allah does not always remove people to hurt you. Sometimes, He removes people to protect you, because without noticing, you may begin to change yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. You may stop saying what you truly feel. You may start holding back the questions that matter to your heart. You may delay the steps you know you need to take because you are afraid of how they will react. Slowly, quietly, you begin to trade pieces of who you are for the safety of staying connected. And this does not happen in dramatic ways. It happens in small moments. You choose silence instead of honesty. You choose peace instead of truth. You choose belonging instead of growth. Over time, these small choices begin to shape you into someone who feels familiar to others, but unfamiliar to yourself. Allah sees this long before you do. He sees the person you are meant to become, even when you can only see the person you are right now. He sees the strength, the clarity, and the purpose that is forming inside you, even when it still feels fragile and uncertain. And He knows that if you stay in the same space, with the same voices shaping your decisions, that future version of you may never fully rise. So He creates distance, not to make you feel alone, not to make you suffer, but to give you room to breathe again. In that space, you begin to notice yourself. You begin to hear your own thoughts without interruption. You begin to feel what truly matters to you, without having to filter it through someone else's expectations. You begin to recognize what you were carrying that was never yours to carry in the first place. This is where you start to return to who you really are. What feels like loss at first slowly reveals itself as protection. What feels like rejection begins to feel like guidance. And what feels like emptiness begins to feel like space. Space for growth, space for healing, and space for a deeper connection with Allah. You were not pushed away. You were gently pulled back to yourself, because Allah knows that the greatest thing you can lose is not a person. It is who you were created to be. And when He withdraws your access to something or someone, it is often because He is guarding the part of you that has not fully come alive yet. Allah lowered the noise so your heart could speak. There are seasons in life when everything becomes quieter all at once. Fewer messages, fewer invitations, fewer voices around you. And in that quiet, your first thought may be that something is wrong with you, that you have been left behind, that the world has moved on without you. But sometimes, this quiet is not a sign of being forgotten. It is a sign of being invited inward. When life is loud, your heart rarely gets a chance to speak. You are always responding to expectations, responding to people's opinions, responding to what the world tells you that you should want, fear, or chase. And in all that responding, you slowly stop listening to what is actually happening inside you. Allah knows this, so He lowers the volume of your life. Not suddenly, not harshly, but gently, over time. He allows certain conversations to fade. He lets certain connections drift. He creates space where there once was constant movement. And in that space, something unfamiliar begins to happen. You start to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You start to feel emotions you had been pushing aside. You begin to notice questions rising in your heart that you never had time to face before. At first, this can feel uncomfortable. Silence has a way of revealing what noise can hide. It shows you the hopes you buried, the wounds you ignored, the dreams you postponed, the fears you pretended were not there. But this discomfort is not meant to harm you. It is meant to bring you back to yourself. This is often where Allah meets you most closely, not in the crowded rooms of life, not in the moments when everyone is watching, but in the quiet moments where you sit alone with your thoughts, your doubts, and your prayers. This is where your conversations with Him become more honest. You stop using perfect words. You stop pretending you are stronger than you feel. You begin to speak from the place that is actually hurting, actually hoping, actually searching. And in that honesty, your heart begins to soften. You start to realize what truly matters to you, not what you were taught to care about. You begin to recognize what brings you peace, not just what brings you approval. You start to see which paths feel right in your soul, not just which ones look right to others. This is what the quiet is for. It is not a punishment. It is not a pause. It is not a sign that life has ended. It is a clearing, a space where Allah gently moves the distractions aside so you can finally see what has been waiting for your attention all along. And when you learn to sit in this quiet without running from it, you begin to understand something deeply. The noise was never protecting you. The silence is. Some people were only meant to know the old you. There is a truth that can feel difficult to accept at first, but brings a quiet kind of peace when you finally understand it. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay for every version of you. Some people meet you at a moment when you are still discovering yourself, when your heart is softer, your boundaries are lighter, and your direction is still forming. They get to know you in that stage, and they grow comfortable with who you are in that moment. They learn how to speak to you, how to be around you, and how to fit you into their world. But growth changes a person, not loudly, not suddenly, but slowly, from the inside out. As you grow, the things you care about begin to shift. What once felt important starts to feel small. What once felt acceptable begins to feel heavy. You become more aware of what drains you and what gives you peace. And without meaning to, you start moving differently through the world. You may speak less, but with more honesty. You may listen more, but tolerate less. You may move slower, but with more certainty. And sometimes, the people who knew the old you do not recognize this new way of being. It is not because you became cold or distant. It is because you became clearer. Your presence no longer fits the same patterns. You no longer respond the same way. You no longer adjust yourself to keep everything smooth and easy. You begin to value peace over approval, depth over comfort, truth over familiarity. This can make others feel unsure of where they stand with you. Not everyone knows how to walk beside a person who is becoming more rooted in who they are. Some people were comfortable when you were more flexible, more available, more willing to bend. When you begin to stand more firmly, even in gentle ways, the space between you can quietly grow. And that space does not always come from conflict. Sometimes it comes from difference. Difference in direction, difference in values, difference in how you see the world now. Allah allows this not to make you feel alone, but to make sure you are walking in a path that truly belongs to you. Because if everyone from your past could walk with you into your future, you might never notice how much you have changed. You might never realize how much strength, clarity, and depth has grown inside you. Letting go of people who only knew the old you can feel like losing a part of your history. But in reality, it is often a sign that you are stepping into a new chapter, a chapter where you are no longer becoming who others are comfortable with, but becoming who you were created to be. Allah removed the crowd so you would stop negotiating your soul. There is something that happens to the heart when too many eyes are watching it. You begin to measure yourself. You begin to choose words that will land softly instead of words that are true. You begin to hide the parts of you that feel uncertain, weak, or still growing. Without realizing it, you start living in small adjustments, shaping yourself to fit the room you are in, rather than standing fully in who you are. At first, this feels like kindness. You tell yourself you are being patient, understanding, and flexible. But over time, it can slowly turn into something else. You begin to delay your own needs. You begin to silence your own convictions. You begin to shrink the parts of your faith, your values, and your dreams that might make others uncomfortable. Allah sees this long before you do. He sees when your soul starts to feel tired, not because life is hard, but because you are constantly carrying the weight of being understood, accepted, and approved. He sees when your prayers become quieter, not because your faith is weaker, but because you are afraid of how your devotion might look to others. So Allah does something gentle but powerful. He reduces the crowd, not to isolate you, but to free you. When fewer people are around, something changes inside you. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself. You no longer feel the pressure to perform strength, happiness, or certainty. You begin to sit with your own thoughts instead of managing how others see you. This is where your soul gets a chance to speak honestly. In this quieter space, you begin to ask yourself questions you avoided before. What do I truly believe? What do I actually want from this life? What feels right in my heart, even if no one else agrees? And in asking these questions, you start to feel a deeper kind of peace. Not the peace that comes from being liked, but the peace that comes from being aligned. This is where your connection with Allah becomes more personal. You stop praying in ways that sound good. You start praying in ways that feel real. You stop using perfect words. You begin using honest ones. You bring your confusion, your weakness, and your hopes directly to Him without editing them for an audience. What once felt like loneliness slowly begins to feel like privacy. Privacy with your own heart. Privacy with your Creator. And in that privacy, something stronger than confidence is born. Sincerity. You begin to live less for how your life looks, and more for how your life feels inside. You begin to choose what brings you closer to peace instead of what brings you closer to approval. You begin to stand in your values, not because others are watching, but because you finally believe in them yourself. Allah did not remove the crowd to make you small. He removed the crowd so you could finally stand tall, even when no one is looking. Allah changed your source of comfort. There was a time when comfort came to you through people. A message could lift your mood. A voice could calm your worry. A presence could make your heart feel steady again. And there is nothing wrong with that. Allah created us to need connection, to feel warmth in companionship, to find relief in being understood. But sometimes, without noticing, your heart begins to lean too heavily in one direction. You start reaching for people before you reach for Allah. You begin to look for reassurance in human hands before you look upward for guidance. This shift is quiet. It does not announce itself. It happens when you feel unsettled, and your first instinct is to call someone instead of sitting with Allah. It happens when you feel lost, and you look for advice before you look for prayer. It happens when someone's approval starts to shape how you see yourself more than Allah's closeness does. Allah sees this, not with anger, but with care. So He begins to change the way comfort reaches you. He allows certain people to become less available. He lets certaines conversations fades. He creates moments where you look around and realize there is no one to lean on the way you used to. At first, this can feel unsettling. You may feel exposed, unsure, even a little afraid. But in that moment, something powerful begins to form inside you. You turn inward, and then you turn upward. You begin to speak to Allah more honestly. Not in polished words, but in raw ones. You bring Him your confusion instead of hiding it. You bring him your fears instead of masking them. You bring him your hopes instead of quietly carrying them alone. And slowly, your heart learns a new habit. When something hurts, you pause instead of reaching for someone else. When something confuses you, you sit in prayer instead of searching for immediate answers. When something feels heavy, you place it in Allah's hands instead of carrying it on your own. This does not mean people disappear from your life. It means their role changes. They become companions, not anchors. Support, not sources. Presence, not purpose. Your center of gravity shifts back to where it was always meant to be, with Allah. And in that shift, something inside you becomes steadier. You are no longer easily shaken by who stays or who leaves. You are no longer defined by who understands you or who does not. Your peace begins to come from a place that is not fragile, not temporary, not dependent on another person's mood, time, or attention. What once felt like emotional loss begins to feel like spiritual grounding. You realize that Allah did not take comfort away from you. He taught you where it truly comes from. And when your heart finally learns how to rest with Him, you discover a kind of calm that no absence can steal and no presence can replace. Allah is teaching you how to stand when no one is standing with you. There comes a season in life when you begin to notice something quietly changing. You are making choices that no one claps for. You are walking away from things no one understands. You are holding on to values that no one around you seems to share. And in that moment, your heart may feel exposed, because it is one thing to be strong when you are supported. It is another thing to be strong when you are alone in your decision. This is the kind of strength Allah builds slowly, in silence. When people are around, it is easy to borrow confidence from their approval. Their agreement can make you feel steady. Their praise can make you feel sure. But when they step away, something deeper is required. You can no longer lean on how others see you. You have to lean on what you believe. Allah allows this space not to make you doubt yourself, but to show you what is truly holding you up. In this season, you begin to make choices because they feel right in your heart, not because they look right to others. You begin to walk a path because it brings you peace, not because it brings you recognition. You begin to hold your ground, not because someone is watching, but because you know where you stand with Allah. At first, this can feel lonely. You may wonder why fewer people understand you. You may question why your circle feels smaller. You may feel the quiet weight of being the only one in the room who sees things the way you do. But this is where something strong begins to take shape inside you. You start to realize that being alone in your values is better than being surrounded in your compromise. You start to feel that being misunderstood is lighter than betraying your own heart. You begin to see that walking slowly in the right direction is better than running quickly in the wrong one. This is not about becoming hard. It is about becoming rooted. A rooted person does not move easily when the wind changes. A rooted heart does not shift every time opinions do. You begin to develop an inner steadiness that does not rise and fall with people's reactions. And in this steadiness, your relationship with Allah deepens again. You start to make decisions with a quiet prayer instead of a loud explanation. You begin to seek His approval instead of the world's agreement. You begin to trust that even if no one else sees the path you are on, He does. This is how Allah teaches you to stand, not by placing you on a stage, but by placing you in moments where you must choose Him, even when no one else chooses you. And when you learn how to stand here, in this quiet strength, you discover something that cannot be taken from you. You are no longer held up by who is beside you. You are held up by who is above you. Allah ended what you were about to lose yourself inside. There are moments when a connection does not fall apart suddenly. It slowly asks you to become smaller, not in one big decision, but in many small ones. You stay quiet, when something in you wants to speak. You agree when something in you feels uneasy. You remain when something in you feels tired of holding on. At first, you tell yourself you are being patient, that you are being understanding, that you are choosing peace. But over time, that peace begins to feel heavy, because it is no longer coming from harmony, it is coming from silence. Allah sees this long before you can name it. He sees when your heart begins to bend in ways it was not meant to bend. He sees when your faith, your values, or your sense of self begins to soften just to keep a door open that is slowly closing anyway. So he steps in, not with anger, not with punishment, but with protection. He allows the connection to end before it turns into something that slowly drains you. He allows the distance to grow before you forget who you were trying to be. He allows the door to close before you lose the strength to walk away from it yourself. This is not loss. This is rescue. Because there are relationships, habits, and attachments that do not destroy you loudly. They do it quietly. They make you forget what you deserve. They make you lower what you expect. They make you accept what once would have felt impossible to accept. Allah does not allow you to disappear inside something like that. So when something ends, and you did not want it to, it may feel like the ground was pulled from under your feet. You may replay every moment, wondering what you could have said or done differently. You may carry questions that have no answers. But beneath that pain, something else is happening. You are being returned to yourself. You begin to notice how much effort you were carrying alone, how much you were explaining, how much you were adjusting, how much of your own needs you placed to the side just to keep the connection alive. And in noticing this, a quiet strength begins to rise. You start to realize that being alone is not the same as being lost. You begin to understand that letting go is not the same as failing. You start to feel that keeping your soul intact is more important than keeping a door open. Allah did not end something to take something from you. He ended it to give you back to yourself. So, if something closed that you were still holding on to, do not only ask what you lost, ask what you were saved from. Because sometimes, the most loving thing Allah can do is remove what you were slowly disappearing inside and return you to the person you were always meant to be. What Allah is preparing will meet you, not test you. There is a quiet fear many hearts carry after something ends. A fear that the next place will be the same, that the next people will ask the same of you, that you will have to explain yourself all over again, prove your worth again, and make space for yourself again. But what Allah prepares does not come to examine you. It comes to recognize you. Everything that has been removed from your life has been shaping you for a different kind of arrival. An arrival where you do not walk in as someone asking to be accepted, but as someone who already belongs. The place Allah is guiding you toward will feel different in your soul before it makes sense in your mind. You will notice it in how your chest feels lighter instead of tighter. You will feel it in how you do not have to measure every word. You will sense it in how your presence does not need to be adjusted to fit the room. What is meant for you will not require you to become smaller. It will allow you to be honest. It will allow you to be steady. It will allow you to be whole. You will no longer feel like you are being evaluated by every conversation or every moment. You will not feel like you are constantly on trial, waiting to see if you are enough. Instead, you will feel received, not because you performed well, but because you arrived as yourself. This does not mean everything will be easy. Growth will still be there. Effort will still be there. Responsibility will still be there. But the difference is this: you will not feel like you are carrying all of it alone. The people, the purpose, and the spaces Allah aligns for you next will meet you where you stand, not where you pretend to be. They will walk with you, not weigh you down. They will support your becoming, not resist it. And when you finally step into that place, something inside you will quietly understand why so much had to be removed. You will see that the silence was not emptiness. You will see that the distance was not rejection. You will see that the endings were not punishment. They were preparation. So if you are standing in a season where things feel unfinished, unclear, or uncertain, do not rush it. Do not chase what has already been released. Do not try to reopen what Allah has gently closed. Trust that what is being built for you is being built with intention, care, and love, because what is coming will not ask you to prove who you are. It will remind you. Before you move on, don't rush back into the world just yet. Let the quiet stay a little longer. Let your heart sit with what it just felt. Not everything in life needs an answer right away. Some things need space before they make sense. If people have left, if doors have closed, if your world feels smaller than it used to, don't immediately call it loss. Sometimes it is clarity. Sometimes it is mercy. Sometimes it is Allah gently moving what no longer fits the person you are becoming. You don't have to understand every ending tonight. You don't have to make peace with every chapter right now. All you need to do is trust that the one who guided you to this moment is still guiding you forward. So when you stand up from here, carry this with you quietly. You were not forgotten. You were not overlooked. You were not left behind. You were being led. And what Allah is leading you toward will not ask you to shrink. It will ask you to rise gently, honestly, and in your own time. Stay with Him, even when the world feels silent. Especially then,